It was a busy evening at a luxurious five-star hotel, one of the most prestigious in the city. The lobby was buzzing with guests, wealthy travelers, business executives, and celebrities. The staff moved swiftly, ensuring every need was met with precision and grace. Among them was a young man in his late 20s, working as a junior staff member. He wasn't in a high position, but he took pride in his work. He was polite, hardworking, and always willing to go the extra mile to help guests and colleagues alike. The young man had been working at the hotel for about a year. He wasn't from a wealthy background, and this job was his way of supporting his family. He had dreams of climbing the ladder, maybe one day becoming a manager himself. But for now, he was content doing his best in his current role. He believed that hard work and kindness would eventually pay off. One evening, as the hotel was preparing for a high-profile event, the young man was assigned to assist with guest arrivals. The manager on duty that night was known for his sharp tongue and arrogant demeanor. He often belittled his staff, especially those he considered beneath him. The young man had experienced this behavior before, but he always tried to stay professional and not let it affect him. As the guests began to arrive, the young man greeted them with a warm smile, offering assistance with their luggage and guiding them to the event hall. He was doing his job perfectly, but the manager seemed to be watching him like a hawk, looking for any reason to criticize. At one point, a guest approached the young man with a question about the event. The young man didn't know the answer immediately, but he assured the guest he would find out. He quickly went to the front desk to get the information. When he returned with the answer, the guest was pleased and thanked him for his help. But the manager had seen the interaction. He walked over to the young man, his face twisted in a sneer. "What took you so long?" he snapped, loud enough for nearby guests and staff to hear. "Do you even know how to do your job? Or are you just here to waste everyone's time?" The young man was taken aback. He had done nothing wrong, he had simply gone out of his way to assist a guest. But before he could explain, the manager cut him off. "You're useless," the manager said, his voice dripping with contempt. "I don't know why we even keep people like you around. You're an embarrassment to this hotel." The young man felt his face burn with humiliation. He wanted to defend himself, but he knew arguing with the manager would only make things worse. He bit his tongue and nodded, apologizing quietly. The manager rolled his eyes and walked away, muttering insults under his breath. The other staff members nearby had heard everything. Some looked sympathetic, but no one dared to speak up. They knew the manager had a reputation for being ruthless, and no one wanted to risk their job by confronting him. The young man tried to shake off the incident and continue working, but the manager's words lingered in his mind, weighing heavily on his heart. As the night went on, the young man couldn't help but feel a growing sense of frustration. He had always tried to be respectful and professional, even in the face of rudeness. But this time, something felt different. The manager's public humiliation had crossed a line. The young man began to wonder if he should just quit and find another job where he would be treated with respect. But then, something unexpected happened. As the event was winding down, a well-dressed man approached the young man. He had been observing the interaction between the young man and the manager earlier. The man introduced himself as a frequent guest of the hotel and a successful entrepreneur. He had seen how the young man had handled the situation with grace and professionalism, despite the manager's harsh treatment. "I just wanted to say," the man began, "that I was very impressed by how you handled yourself earlier. Not many people can keep their cool in a situation like that. You have a lot of potential, and I think you're worth far more than how you're being treated here." The young man was stunned. He hadn't expected anyone to notice, let alone compliment him. He thanked the man, feeling a small glimmer of hope. Maybe he wasn't as worthless as the manager had made him feel. The entrepreneur handed the young man his business card. "If you ever decide to leave this place, give me a call. I'd be happy to offer you a position at my company." I think you'd be a great fit." The young man took the card, his hands trembling slightly. He couldn't believe what was happening. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of validation. Someone had recognized his worth, and it meant more to him than he could express. As the night came to an end, the young man replayed the events in his mind. He thought about the manager's cruel words and the entrepreneur's kind offer. He realized he had a choice to make: stay in a toxic environment where he was constantly belittled, or take a leap of faith and pursue an opportunity where he might be valued. The next day, the young man arrived at work with a newfound determination. He knew what he had to do. He approached the manager's office, his heart pounding but his resolve steady. He knocked on the door and waited for the manager to invite him in. The manager looked up from his desk, his expression cold and uninterested. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone dismissive. The young man took a deep breath. "I wanted to let you know that I'll be resigning from my position," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I've been offered an opportunity elsewhere, and I've decided to take it." The manager raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. He hadn't expected this. "Is that so?" he said, leaning back in his chair. "Well, I can't say I'm surprised. You were never cut out for this job anyway." The young man didn't respond to the jab. Instead, he simply nodded and turned to leave. As he walked out of the office, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had stood up for himself, and it felt empowering. Over the next few days, the young man prepared for his new job. He called the entrepreneur, who was delighted to hear from him. They arranged a meeting, and the young man was offered a position at the entrepreneur's company. It was a fresh start, a chance to prove himself in a new environment where he would be treated with respect. On his last day at the hotel, the young man said goodbye to his colleagues. Many of them were sad to see him go, but they understood his decision. They had all witnessed the manager's behavior, and they knew how difficult it could be to work under such conditions. As the young man walked out of the hotel for the last time, he felt a mix of emotions: relief, excitement, and a little bit of fear. But most of all, he felt hopeful. He had taken control of his life, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next. Little did he know, his next move would not only change his life but also leave everyone at the hotel in shock. The story was far from over, and the young man's journey was just beginning. The young man's first day at his new job was nothing short of exhilarating. The entrepreneur's company was a fast-paced, innovative environment, and the young man felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced before. His new boss, the entrepreneur who had noticed him at the hotel, was warm and encouraging. He made it clear that he valued the young man's work ethic and believed in his potential. The young man was assigned to a team that handled client relations, a role that required patience, communication skills, and a knack for problem-solving, all qualities he had honed during his time at the hotel. His colleagues were friendly and supportive, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was part of a team where his contributions mattered. As the weeks went by, the young man began to thrive in his new role. He was quick to learn, always willing to take on new challenges, and his positive attitude made him a favorite among his coworkers. The entrepreneur often checked in on him, offering guidance and encouragement. It was a stark contrast to the toxic environment he had left behind at the hotel. Meanwhile, back at the five-star hotel, things were not going well. The manager's abrasive behavior had started to take a toll on the staff. Morale was low, and turnover rates were high. Many employees had either quit or were actively looking for other jobs. The hotel's reputation was beginning to suffer as well. Guests had started to notice the lack of warmth and professionalism among the staff, and negative reviews were popping up online. The hotel's owner, a wealthy and influential businessman, was growing increasingly concerned. He had built the hotel from the ground up, and it had always been known for its impeccable service and luxurious experience. But now, it seemed like the standards were slipping. He decided to investigate the matter personally. One evening, the owner arrived at the hotel unannounced. He walked through the lobby, observing the staff and interacting with guests. It didn't take long for him to notice the tension in the air. The staff seemed nervous and unhappy, and the manager was nowhere to be seen. When the owner finally found him, the manager was in his office, scrolling through his phone and ignoring the chaos outside. The owner was furious. He had trusted the manager to run the hotel efficiently, but it was clear that the man had let his ego and arrogance get in the way of his responsibilities. The owner decided it was time for a change. He called an emergency meeting with the senior staff and announced that the manager was being let go immediately. The news spread quickly, and the staff couldn't believe it. The manager who had made their lives miserable was finally gone. There was a sense of relief, but also uncertainty. Who would take his place? And would things really improve? The owner knew he needed someone who could restore the hotel's reputation and bring back the sense of pride and professionalism that had once defined it. He thought about the young man who had recently resigned. He had heard about the incident where the manager had publicly humiliated him, and he remembered how the young man had always been polite and hardworking, even in the face of adversity. The owner decided to reach out to the young man. He called him one evening, introducing himself and explaining the situation at the hotel. "I know you've moved on to a new job," the owner said, "but I believe you have what it takes to turn things around here. I'd like to offer you the position of manager." The young man was stunned. He had never expected to hear from the hotel's owner, let alone be offered such a significant role. He thanked the owner for the opportunity but explained that he was happy in his current job and didn't want to leave on bad terms with his new employer. The owner understood but didn't give up. "Think about it," he said. "This is your chance to make a real difference. You know what it's like to work here, and you know what needs to change. I'll give you full authority to make those changes. And of course, the salary and benefits will reflect the responsibility." The young man was torn. He had found a sense of belonging at his new job, but the offer from the hotel was tempting. It was an opportunity to prove himself, to show that he was capable of leading and making a positive impact. He decided to sleep on it and discuss it with his family. The next day, the young man called the hotel owner and accepted the offer. He explained that he would need a couple of weeks to wrap things up at his current job, and the owner agreed. The young man then approached his new boss, the entrepreneur, and explained the situation. To his surprise, the entrepreneur was supportive. "I always knew you were destined for great things," the entrepreneur said with a smile. "This is a fantastic opportunity for you, and I completely understand why you'd want to take it. Just know that you'll always have a place here if things don't work out." The young man was grateful for the entrepreneur's understanding and support. He spent the next 2 weeks training his replacement and saying goodbye to his colleagues. On his last day, the team threw him a small farewell party, and the young man felt a pang of sadness at leaving such a wonderful group of people. When the day finally came for him to return to the hotel, the young man felt a mix of emotions. He was nervous but also excited. He knew the challenges that lay ahead, but he was determined to succeed. As he walked through the lobby, he noticed the staff's curious glances. They had heard about his return, but no one knew what to expect. The owner called a meeting to introduce the young man as the new manager. The staff was shocked. Many of them remembered him as the junior staff member who had been treated so poorly by the previous manager. They couldn't believe he was now in charge. The young man stood before them, his voice steady and confident. "I know things haven't been easy here," he began. "But I believe in this hotel, and I believe in all of you. Together, we can restore this place to what it once was, a place where guests feel welcomed and valued, and where we can take pride in our work." The staff listened intently, their skepticism slowly turning into hope. The young man's words were genuine, and his passion was evident. For the first time in a long while, they felt like they had a leader who truly cared. The young man wasted no time in implementing changes. He held one-on-one meetings with the staff to understand their concerns and ideas. He introduced new training programs to improve customer service and created a more supportive and collaborative work environment. He also made it clear that disrespectful behavior would not be tolerated, setting an example by treating everyone with kindness and respect. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere at the hotel began to change. The staff felt more motivated and appreciated, and their enthusiasm translated into better service for the guests. Positive reviews started to pour in, and the hotel's reputation began to recover. The young man's journey was far from over, but he had already achieved something remarkable. He had turned a toxic environment into a place of positivity and growth, proving that kindness and determination could overcome even the toughest challenges. As the weeks turned into months, the young man's leadership began to transform the hotel in ways no one had thought possible. The staff, once demoralized and disheartened, now worked with a renewed sense of purpose. The young man's approach was simple but effective. He led by example. He was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, and he never asked anyone to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. One of the first changes he implemented was an open-door policy. He made it clear that any staff member could come to him with their concerns, ideas, or even personal issues. He listened patiently, offering advice and support whenever he could. This small gesture made a huge difference. For the first time, the staff felt like their voices mattered. The young man also introduced regular team meetings where everyone could share their thoughts and suggestions. He encouraged creativity and innovation, often implementing ideas that came from the most junior staff members. This not only boosted morale but also led to some brilliant improvements in the hotel's operations. One such idea came from a young housekeeper who suggested creating a welcome kit for guests. The kit included small amenities like bottled water, snacks, and a handwritten note from the staff welcoming the guest to the hotel. The young man loved the idea and immediately put it into action. The guests were delighted, and many of them mentioned the kits in their positive reviews. The hotel's owner was thrilled with the changes. He had taken a risk by appointing the young man as manager, but it was clear now that it had been the right decision. The hotel was not only regaining its reputation but also setting new standards for excellence. The owner often stopped by to check on things, and he was always impressed by what he saw. One day, the owner called the young man into his office. "I have to admit," he said, "I wasn't sure how this would turn out. But you've exceeded all my expectations. The hotel is thriving, and it's all thanks to you." The young man smiled modestly. "Thank you, sir. But it's not just me. It's the entire team. They're the ones who deserve the credit." The owner nodded, appreciating the young man's humility. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You've turned this place around, and I couldn't be happier." Despite the success, the young man knew there was still work to be done. He wanted to take the hotel to even greater heights, and he had a vision for what that could look like. He spent countless hours brainstorming ideas, researching industry trends, and talking to guests to understand their needs and preferences. One of his biggest goals was to make the hotel more environmentally friendly. He introduced recycling programs, reduced plastic usage, and partnered with local suppliers to source organic and sustainable products. He also organized community outreach programs, encouraging the staff to volunteer and give back to the city that had supported the hotel for so many years. The staff embraced these initiatives wholeheartedly. They were proud to be part of a hotel that cared about more than just profits. The young man's leadership had inspired them to think bigger and do better, not just for the hotel but for the world around them. As the hotel continued to flourish, the young man's story began to spread. News outlets picked up on the remarkable turnaround, and he was invited to speak at industry events and conferences. He used these platforms to share his journey and the lessons he had learned along the way. One of his key messages was the importance of treating people with respect and kindness. "It doesn't matter what position you're in," he would say. What matters is how you treat others. Everyone deserves to be valued and appreciated, and when you create a culture of respect, amazing things can happen. His words resonated with many, and he quickly became a respected figure in the hospitality industry. But despite his growing fame, the young man remained grounded. He never forgot where he came from or the struggles he had faced. He made it a point to stay connected with his team and to continue learning from them. One day, as he was walking through the lobby, he noticed a new employee struggling with a heavy suitcase. The young man immediately stepped in to help, just as he had done countless times before. The new employee was surprised. "You're the manager," she said. "You don't have to do this." The young man smiled. "I may be the manager, but I'm also part of this team. We're all here to help each other." The new employee was touched by his kindness, and it set the tone for her experience at the hotel. She quickly became one of the most dedicated members of the team, inspired by the young man's leadership. As time went on, the young man's impact extended beyond the hotel. He became a mentor to many, offering guidance and support to those who were just starting out in the industry. He also used his platform to advocate for better working conditions and fair treatment for hospitality workers everywhere. Despite all his achievements, the young man never lost sight of his roots. He often visited his family, who were incredibly proud of everything he had accomplished. His mother would often remind him of the values she had instilled in him: hard work, humility, and compassion. "You've done so well," she would say. "But never forget where you came from." The young man took her words to heart. He knew that his success was not just his own but the result of the support and love he had received from so many people along the way. He was determined to pay it forward and to continue making a positive impact in whatever way he could. One evening, as he stood on the hotel's rooftop, looking out at the city lights, the young man reflected on his journey. He thought about the challenges he had faced, the lessons he had learned, and the people who had believed in him. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment. But he also knew that his journey was far from over. There were still more goals to achieve, more lives to touch, and more dreams to pursue. With a renewed sense of purpose, he made a silent promise to himself: no matter how far he went, he would always stay true to the values that had guided him this far. As he walked back inside, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, the young man felt a sense of peace. He had come a long way, but he knew that the best was yet to come. The young man's success at the hotel continued to grow, and so did his reputation. Guests from all over the world began to take notice of the exceptional service and unique atmosphere he had cultivated. The hotel became a destination not just for its luxury, but for the warmth and care that every guest experienced. Word of mouth spread like wildfire, and soon, the hotel was fully booked months in advance. One day, a famous travel blogger arrived at the hotel. She had heard about the young man's story and wanted to see for herself what made the place so special. The young man greeted her personally, welcoming her with the same genuine kindness he showed everyone. Over the course of her stay, the blogger was blown away by the attention to detail, the thoughtful gestures, and the overall sense of joy that permeated the hotel. Before she left, the blogger asked the young man if she could interview him for her blog. He agreed, and they sat down for a candid conversation. She asked him about his journey, his leadership style, and the philosophy behind the hotel's transformation. "It's simple, really," the young man said. "I believe that people are at the heart of everything. When you treat your team with respect and kindness, they pass that on to the guests. And when guests feel valued, they leave with a positive experience. It's a ripple effect." The blogger was deeply impressed. She published the interview, and it quickly went viral. The young man's story inspired countless people, not just in the hospitality industry but in all walks of life. He received messages from people around the world, thanking him for his wisdom and sharing how his journey had motivated them to make positive changes in their own lives. Despite the newfound attention, the young man remained focused on his work. He knew that the hotel's success was a team effort, and he made sure to celebrate the contributions of every staff member. He introduced an Employee of the Month program, where the winner would receive a bonus and a day off. He also organized regular team-building activities, from group outings to volunteer projects, to strengthen the bond among the staff. One of the most memorable events was a charity gala the young man organized to raise funds for a local children's hospital. He involved the entire team in the planning process, and the event was a huge success. The hotel's ballroom was transformed into a magical space, and guests were treated to an unforgettable evening of food, music, and entertainment. The young man gave a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone for their support and emphasizing the importance of giving back to the community. The gala raised a significant amount of money for the hospital, and the young man was invited to visit the facility to see the impact of the donation. As he walked through the halls, meeting the children and their families, he was reminded of why he did what he did. It wasn't just about running a successful hotel, it was about making a difference in people's lives. Back at the hotel, the young man continued to innovate. He introduced a new loyalty program that rewarded guests for their repeat visits with exclusive perks and experiences. He also launched a series of workshops and events, from cooking classes with the hotel's chefs to guided tours of the city's hidden gems. These initiatives not only enhanced the guest experience but also created new opportunities for the staff to showcase their talents. One of the most popular workshops was led by the hotel's head chef, who taught guests how to prepare a signature dish from the hotel's menu. The young man often joined in, rolling up his sleeves and cooking alongside the guests. His down-to-earth nature and willingness to get involved made him even more beloved by both the staff and the guests. As the hotel's reputation soared, the young man began to receive offers from other establishments. Competing hotels and luxury resorts wanted him to bring his magic to their teams. But the young man was loyal to the hotel that had given him his big break. He politely declined the offers, explaining that he still had much to accomplish where he was. The hotel's owner was deeply grateful for the young man's loyalty. He knew that the young man's success had brought immense value to the hotel, and he wanted to reward him in a meaningful way. One day, he called the young man into his office and made him an unexpected offer. "I've been thinking," the owner said, "and I'd like to make you a partner in this hotel. You've done so much for this place, and I believe you deserve to have a stake in its future." The young man was speechless. He had never imagined that he would one day be a partner in such a prestigious establishment. He thanked the owner profusely, but he also asked for some time to think about it. The offer was incredibly generous, but he wanted to make sure he was making the right decision. That evening, the young man went home and discussed the offer with his family. They were overjoyed and encouraged him to accept. "This is your chance to secure your future," his mother said. "And to continue doing what you love." The next day, the young man met with the owner and accepted the offer. He became a partner in the hotel, and his role expanded to include strategic planning and long-term vision. He was now not just a manager but a key decision-maker, shaping the future of the hotel. With his new responsibilities, the young man began to think even bigger. He envisioned expanding the hotel's brand, opening new locations in other cities, and creating a network of luxury hotels that shared the same values of kindness, sustainability, and community. He knew it would be a massive undertaking, but he was excited about the possibilities. As he worked on his plans, the young man never lost sight of the people who had helped him along the way. He made it a point to stay connected with his team, to listen to their ideas, and to support their growth. He also continued to mentor young professionals, sharing his experiences and encouraging them to pursue their dreams. One day, he received a letter from a young woman who had read about his journey and been inspired to apply for a job at the hotel. She wrote about how his story had given her the courage to chase her own dreams, and how she hoped to one day make a difference in the world, just like he had. The young man was deeply moved by the letter. He invited the young woman for an interview and was impressed by her passion and determination. He offered her a position at the hotel, and she quickly became one of the most dedicated members of the team. As he watched her grow and thrive, the young man felt a sense of fulfillment. He realized that his journey was not just about his own success, but about inspiring others to believe in themselves and to strive for greatness. It was a legacy he was proud to leave behind. And so, the young man continued to lead with kindness, to innovate with passion, and to make a difference in the lives of everyone he touched. His story was far from over, and the best was yet to come. With his new role as a partner in the hotel, the young man's responsibilities grew exponentially. He was now involved in high-level decision-making, from financial planning to brand strategy. It was a steep learning curve, but he approached it with the same determination and humility that had brought him this far. He spent long hours studying the industry, consulting with experts, and brainstorming ideas to take the hotel to the next level. One of his first major projects as a partner was to expand the hotel's brand. He envisioned creating a network of luxury hotels that shared the same values of kindness, sustainability, and community. It was an ambitious goal, but he believed it was achievable. He began by identifying potential locations in other cities, focusing on areas that were underserved but had great potential for growth. The young man also wanted to ensure that the new hotels would reflect the unique character of their locations. He believed that luxury wasn't just about opulence, but about creating meaningful experiences that connected guests to the culture and spirit of the place. To achieve this, he planned to collaborate with local artists, chefs, and entrepreneurs, incorporating their talents and stories into the hotel's design and offerings. As he worked on the expansion plans, the young man faced numerous challenges. Securing funding was one of the biggest hurdles. He approached several investors, pitching his vision with passion and conviction. Some were skeptical, but others were inspired by his story and his commitment to making a positive impact. After months of negotiations, he finally secured the funding needed to launch the first new hotel. The location he chose was a vibrant city known for its rich history and artistic heritage. The young man spent weeks there, immersing himself in the local culture and building relationships with the community. He hired a team of architects and designers who shared his vision, and together, they created a concept that was both luxurious and deeply rooted in the city's identity. The new hotel was designed to be a celebration of local art and craftsmanship. The walls were adorned with works by local artists, the furniture was handmade by local artisans, and the menu featured dishes inspired by traditional recipes. The young man also partnered with local organizations to create unique experiences for guests, from guided tours of hidden gems to workshops with local experts. As the construction of the new hotel progressed, the young man faced another challenge, building a team that embodied the values he held dear. He knew that the success of the hotel would depend on the people who worked there, and he was determined to create a culture of respect, kindness, and collaboration. He personally interviewed every candidate, looking not just for skills and experience, but for passion and character. One of the most memorable interviews was with a young man who had grown up in the city and had always dreamed of working in hospitality. He had faced numerous obstacles in his life, but his determination and positive attitude shone through. The young man was impressed by his story and offered him a position on the team. It was a decision he would never regret, as the young man quickly became one of the most dedicated and inspiring members of the staff. As the opening day of the new hotel approached, the young man felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had poured his heart and soul into the project, and he knew that the stakes were high. But he also believed in the vision and the team he had built. He was confident that they could create something truly special. The grand opening was a spectacular event. Guests from all over the world arrived to experience the new hotel, and they were not disappointed. The attention to detail, the warmth of the staff, and the unique sense of place left a lasting impression. The young man gave a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone who had contributed to the project and emphasizing the importance of community and connection. The new hotel was an instant success, receiving rave reviews from guests and critics alike. It quickly became a destination in its own right, attracting travelers who were looking for more than just luxury. They were looking for meaning and authenticity. The young man's vision had come to life, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Back at the original hotel, the young man's team was equally inspired by his success. They saw the new hotel as a testament to what could be achieved with passion, hard work, and a commitment to values. The young man made it a point to share the lessons he had learned from the expansion project, encouraging his team to think creatively and to always strive for excellence. One of the most important lessons he shared was the importance of staying true to one's values, even in the face of challenges. He often reminded his team that success wasn't just about achieving goals, but about how you achieved them. We can build the most beautiful hotels in the world, he would say, but if we don't treat people with kindness and respect, it's all meaningless. The young man's leadership continued to inspire not just his team, but the entire industry. He was invited to speak at conferences and events, where he shared his insights on leadership, innovation, and the power of values-driven business. His story became a case study in how to create a successful brand that made a positive impact on the world. Despite his growing fame, the young man remained grounded. He never forgot the struggles he had faced and the people who had helped him along the way. He made it a point to stay connected with his roots, visiting his family regularly and supporting local initiatives in his hometown. One of the initiatives he was most passionate about was a program to provide scholarships for young people from underprivileged backgrounds who wanted to pursue careers in hospitality. He believed that everyone deserved a chance to follow their dreams, and he was determined to create opportunities for those who might not otherwise have them. The program was a huge success, and many of the scholarship recipients went on to achieve great things. The young man felt a deep sense of pride in their accomplishments, knowing that he had played a part in their journey. It was a reminder that success wasn't just about personal achievement, but about lifting others up along the way. As the young man looked to the future, he knew that there were still many challenges ahead. The hospitality industry was constantly evolving, and he would need to continue innovating and adapting to stay ahead. But he was confident in his ability to navigate whatever came his way, guided by the values that had brought him this far. He also knew that his journey was far from over. There were still more dreams to pursue, more lives to touch, and more impact to make. With a renewed sense of purpose, he set his sights on the next chapter, ready to embrace whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The success of the new hotel solidified the young man's reputation as a visionary leader in the hospitality industry. His unique approach, combining luxury with authenticity, kindness, and community, had set a new standard, and competitors began to take notice. However, the young man wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He knew that staying ahead meant continuing to innovate and staying true to the values that had brought him this far. One of his next big projects was to launch a sustainability initiative across all his hotels. He had always been passionate about protecting the environment, and he believed that the hospitality industry had a responsibility to lead the way in sustainable practices. He assembled a team of experts to develop a comprehensive plan that would reduce the hotel's carbon footprint, minimize waste, and promote eco-friendly practices. The initiative included everything from installing solar panels and energy-efficient systems to eliminating single-use plastics and sourcing locally grown, organic food. The young man also introduced a program where guests could opt to have their linens and towels washed less frequently to conserve water. To his delight, the guests embraced the initiative, many of them praising the hotels for their commitment to sustainability. The young man didn't stop there. He wanted to inspire others in the industry to follow suit, so he organized a sustainability summit, inviting hoteliers, environmental experts, and policymakers to share ideas and collaborate on solutions. The event was a huge success, sparking meaningful conversations and partnerships that would have a lasting impact. As the young man continued to push boundaries, he faced new challenges. One of the biggest was balancing his growing responsibilities with his personal life. The demands of running multiple hotels, speaking at events, and mentoring others left little time for himself. He began to feel the weight of exhaustion, and it didn't go unnoticed by those closest to him. One evening, his mother called him. "You're doing amazing things," she said, "but don't forget to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup." Her words struck a chord. The young man realized that he had been so focused on achieving his goals that he had neglected his own well-being. He decided to make a change, carving out time in his schedule for rest, exercise, and moments of reflection. He also reconnected with old friends and hobbies, finding joy in the simple things that had once brought him peace. The young man's renewed focus on balance had a positive ripple effect. He returned to work with more energy and clarity, and his team noticed the difference. He began to encourage his staff to prioritize their well-being as well, introducing wellness programs and flexible work arrangements. The result was a happier, more productive team that felt valued and supported. Around this time, the young man received an unexpected invitation. A prestigious international organization wanted to honor him with an award for his contributions to the hospitality industry and his commitment to sustainability and community. The awards ceremony would be held in a glamorous city, and he would be recognized alongside other influential leaders from around the world. The young man was humbled by the recognition. He knew that the award wasn't just for him, it was a testament to the hard work and dedication of his entire team. He accepted the invitation and brought a group of his closest colleagues to the ceremony. When his name was called, he took the stage with a heart full of gratitude. "This award isn't just mine," he said in his acceptance speech. "It belongs to everyone who has believed in our vision and worked tirelessly to make it a reality. It's a reminder that when we lead with kindness, respect, and a commitment to something greater than ourselves, we can achieve incredible things." The audience gave him a standing ovation, and the young man felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew that this moment was a milestone, but it was also a reminder of the responsibility he carried. He was determined to use his platform to continue making a positive impact. After the ceremony, the young man and his team celebrated together. They reflected on how far they had come and the challenges they had overcome. The young man felt a profound sense of gratitude for the people who had supported him along the way, his family, his team, and even the guests who had believed in his vision. As the night came to an end, the young man looked out at the city lights and thought about the future. He knew there were still more mountains to climb, more dreams to chase, and more lives to touch. But he also knew that he wasn't alone. He had built a community of people who shared his values and his vision, and together, they could achieve anything. With a heart full of hope and determination, the young man smiled. The journey was far from over, and the best was yet to come. The young man's award brought even more attention to his hotels and his unique approach to hospitality. Media outlets from around the world wanted to interview him, and he was invited to speak at even more prestigious events. While he was grateful for the recognition, he remained focused on his mission, to create spaces where people felt valued, connected, and inspired. One of the most exciting opportunities that came his way was a chance to collaborate with a renowned documentary filmmaker. The filmmaker wanted to create a series highlighting businesses that were making a positive impact on the world, and the young man's hotels were at the top of the list. The series would showcase the hotel's commitment to sustainability, community, and exceptional service, as well as the young man's personal journey. The young man was initially hesitant. He had always been more comfortable behind the scenes, and the idea of being in the spotlight made him nervous. But he also saw it as an opportunity to spread his message on a larger scale. After much thought, he agreed to participate. The filming process was intense but rewarding. The crew spent weeks at the hotels, capturing everything from the daily operations to the special moments that made the hotels unique. They interviewed the staff, the guests, and, of course, the young man himself. He opened up about his struggles, his triumphs, and the values that guided him. One of the most emotional moments came when the crew visited his hometown. They filmed the young man walking through the streets where he had grown up, visiting his old school, and spending time with his family. He shared stories about his childhood, the challenges his family had faced, and how those experiences had shaped him. "This is where it all began," he said, standing in front of the small house where he had grown up. "I never could have imagined that I'd be where I am today. But I've always believed that if you work hard, stay true to your values, and never give up, you can achieve anything." The documentary was a huge success when it premiered. Viewers were moved by the young man's story and inspired by his vision. The series was praised for its authenticity and its focus on the human side of business. It sparked conversations about the importance of kindness, sustainability, and community in the corporate world. The young man was overwhelmed by the response. He received thousands of messages from people who had been inspired by his story, many of them sharing how it had motivated them to make positive changes in their own lives and businesses. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his journey was having a ripple effect far beyond the walls of his hotels. Around the same time, the young man was approached by a publisher who wanted him to write a book. The idea was to share his insights on leadership, innovation, and the power of values-driven business. First, the young man was unsure. He had never considered himself a writer, and the thought of putting his thoughts into a book felt daunting. But after some encouragement from his team and his family, he decided to give it a try. He spent months working on the book, pouring his heart and soul into every chapter. He wrote about his experiences, the lessons he had learned, and the principles that guided him. He also included stories from his team and guests, highlighting the importance of collaboration and community. When the book was finally published, it became an instant bestseller. Readers praised it for its honesty, practicality, and inspiration. The young man was invited to book signings and speaking engagements, where he connected with people from all walks of life. He was humbled by the impact his words were having and grateful for the opportunity to share his message with an even wider audience. Despite his growing fame, the young man remained grounded. He continued to prioritize his team, his guests, and his values. He made it a point to stay connected with his roots, visiting his hometown regularly and supporting local initiatives. He also continued to mentor young professionals, sharing his experiences and encouraging them to pursue their dreams. One of the most rewarding moments came when he received a letter from a young woman who had read his book and been inspired to start her own business. She wrote about how his story had given her the courage to take the leap and how his advice had helped her navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship. The young man was deeply moved by her words and invited her to visit one of his hotels, where he spent an afternoon mentoring her and offering guidance. As the young man reflected on his journey, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had come so far, but he knew that none of it would have been possible without the support of the people who had believed in him along the way. He was determined to continue paying it forward, using his success to create opportunities for others and to make a positive impact on the world. With a heart full of hope and determination, the young man looked to the future. He knew there were still more challenges to face, more dreams to chase, and more lives to touch. But he also knew that he was ready for whatever came next. The journey was far from over, and the best was yet to come. The young man's journey had taken him to heights he had never imagined, but he knew that his work was far from finished. With his hotels thriving, his book inspiring countless readers, and his message resonating around the world, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wanted to use his platform to create even more meaningful change, not just in the hospitality industry, but in the world at large. One of his next big projects was to establish a foundation dedicated to empowering underprivileged communities. The foundation would focus on providing education, training, and resources to help people build better lives for themselves and their families. The young man poured his heart into the initiative, drawing on his own experiences to shape its mission and programs. The foundation's first project was a scholarship program for young people who wanted to pursue careers in hospitality. The young man believed that everyone deserved a chance to follow their dreams, regardless of their background. He personally reviewed applications and interviewed candidates, looking for those who showed passion, resilience, and a commitment to making a difference. One of the first scholarship recipients was a young man from a small village who had grown up helping his family run a modest guest house. Despite facing numerous challenges, he had never given up on his dream of becoming a hotel manager. The young man was deeply moved by his story and offered him not only a scholarship but also a mentorship opportunity at one of his hotels. The scholarship program was just the beginning. The foundation also launched initiatives to support local entrepreneurs, provide vocational training, and promote sustainable practices in communities around the world. The young man traveled extensively to oversee the projects, meeting with beneficiaries and partners to ensure that the foundation's efforts were making a real impact. One of the most memorable trips was to a remote village where the foundation had helped build a community center. The center offered classes in everything from literacy to entrepreneurship, and it had become a hub of hope and opportunity for the villagers. The young man spent days there, listening to their stories, sharing meals, and even teaching a workshop on leadership. As he sat around a campfire one evening, surrounded by the villagers, the young man felt a deep sense of connection. He realized that this was what it was all about, not just building successful businesses, but creating opportunities for people to thrive and to build better lives for themselves and their communities. Back at his hotels, the young man continued to innovate and inspire. He introduced new programs to further enhance the guest experience, from personalized wellness retreats to immersive cultural tours. He also continued to prioritize sustainability, setting ambitious goals to make his hotels carbon neutral within the next decade. The young man's leadership style remained rooted in kindness and humility. He made it a point to stay connected with his team, listening to their ideas and celebrating their achievements. He often said that his greatest pride was not the awards or the accolades, but the people he had the privilege to work with every day. One day, as he was walking through the lobby of his flagship hotel, he noticed a group of new employees going through their orientation. He stopped to introduce himself and to share a few words of encouragement. "This isn't just a job," he told them. "It's an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. Every guest who walks through these doors is trusting us to create a memorable experience for them. And every one of you has the power to make that happen." The new employees were inspired by his words, and the young man felt a sense of fulfillment knowing that he was passing on the values that had guided him throughout his journey. As the years went by, the young man's impact continued to grow. His hotels became synonymous with excellence, kindness, and sustainability. His foundation touched the lives of thousands of people, creating opportunities and transforming communities. And his story inspired countless others to believe in themselves and to strive for greatness. One evening, as he stood on the rooftop of his flagship hotel, looking out at the city lights, the young man reflected on his journey. He thought about the challenges he had faced, the lessons he had learned, and the people who had believed in him along the way. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment. But he also knew that his journey was far from over. There were still more dreams to pursue, more lives to touch, and more impact to make. With a heart full of hope and determination, he smiled. The best was yet to come.